Welcome to Serve and Volley, the tennis podcast for people who like arguments. I'm Nick.
I'm Pavel.
So, welcome back to Serve and Volley. We are recording this on Sunday, which is the day before the final, the men's and women's finals of Indian Wells. So we actually don't know the winner of the tournament.
But it's tonight, right?
It's tonight.
Yeah.
So by the time this is broadcast, by the time you're listening to this, you'll know the winner. So Pavel, who are you saying? Who's the winners?
I imagine Federer and Kerber. Go with experience over, young, exciting Canadian talents. Oh no, wait, Raonic lost the team. Sorry.
Young-ish talents. I mean, is Raonic young? I'm going to go with Federer and what's her name? Andreescu. Just to mix it up a little bit. I think we both agreed that Federer... Let's just talk as though Federer has just comprehensively beaten Team. I think it was 6-4, then 7-5. 6-4, 7-5, just a straight sets victory.
Hopefully you're not jinxing it as a big Federer fan. But, I like Team as well. So, and it would be quite a fun twist if Team's first ever big title came on the hard court.
Quite the twist. We're also recording on St. Patrick's Day, so a little brain teaser for Pavel and our audience. Who is the best in terms of ranking Irish player in tennis history? Little one to think about. We'll come to the end of the baseline. So first up, let's talk about Indian Wells. What are the stories that have been grabbing your attention this week?
Right. So on the men's side, obviously, kind of Djokovic's surprising loss to Kohlschreiber and Nadal's.
You were big in Kohlschreiber last week, right? On the show.
Yeah.
In our Davis Cup segment, and I said Kohlschreiber's,
Yeah.
anything player.
Well, I mean, I do have a weakness for players with one-handed backhands. I think sure, why not? Yeah, I mean, Kohlschreiber beat Kyrgios, beat Djokovic, and then lost pretty bloodlessly to Monfils, who then got injured, pulled out. So there's been kind of this tournament where it's nice when you have an upset and then actually something comes of it. Whereas in this tournament, it just kind of seems like players have picked up what other players have left off, and nobody's really.
Well, not in the women's side. I guess Andreescu is the person you'd point to as. Yeah, she's kept the momentum going. Yeah,
that is the big story of the week. I mean, as much as the next gen is bigged up on the men's tour, really, on the women's side, the young players are doing amazingly well. I mean, obviously Osaka, who we've already discussed, is a next genner if we're talking about age, and she's number one in the world and undisputed. Whereas in the men's side, this kind of talk, will Zverev ever get to the semis of a Grand Slam, etc. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with Andreescu. I have to confess I haven't seen her play that much yet, but
who were the big disappointments across the? I mean, we've talked about Djokovic, Zverev. Who did he lose to again? He got battered, right?
Did he?
Pause while men Google.
Approximately 10 hours later,
Zverev lost 6-3, 6-1 to Jan-Lennard Struff.
Oh wow, that is shocking.
Yeah, I mean that's a calamitous result at a big tournament. I mean, it's a subject we'll discuss in another episode about kind of what would constitute a fifth Grand Slam. But in terms of what we actually practically have, Indian Wells is probably the biggest tournament outside the slams.
Yeah, if you don't count the tour finals, which have their kind of peculiarity, and also Indian Wells benefits from being, having the men's and the women's in the same week and being a high-profile event for both, which is something we also associate with the majors.
But we're sitting here with the highlights of Day 10 on in the background, and you can see they're playing in a stadium that is sort of Roland Garros-esque,
It's the second biggest purpose-built tennis arena after Arthur Ashe.
Wow. Well, he may not know the answer to the Irish tennis player question, but my God,
maybe I should have phrased it as a question.
Stadia.
Yeah, maybe I should have done my best Alex Trebek impression.
So we've talked a little bit about those disappointments. Osaka lost to Bencic 6-3, 6-1, which is exactly the same as Zverev.
Although I would say Bencic is probably a more respectable player to lose to than Struff.
For sure, and she's in good form this year. It seems like she's having, she's sneaking her way into the.
She's like in top 5 in the race, I think, or
right. Yeah. And she's now just outside the top 20. I imagine the next ranking shift, she'll move into the top 20.
Yeah,
and she's always been someone who's. I remember when she won in Eastbourne. He says with rising intonation because he's not sure, but I think she won in Eastbourne a few years ago, and it seemed like she was a big star of the future, and
she has some injury
didn't
problems.
Quite happen.
Well, I think it was her body that let her down. I don't think she, she's not like a Bouchard or one of those players that just peaks really early and then doesn't do very much with her career. I think she's if she can keep injury free, she has.
Yeah. Anyway, semi-finals here, losing to Kerber,
and she's still very young because she broke through as a teenager as well.
Yeah.
So she won the Rogers Cup, I think, a few years back. So that's probably her biggest achievement.
I can sort of see Federer coaching her after he retires.
Well, they had very good team chemistry at the Hopman Cup.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see Federer do some coaching, although I doubt it. I think he will just be counting his millions, as Bernard Tomic would put it. Anyway, so what are the other big stories of the week? Team first ever hardcourt Masters final. Well, I mean, in their head-to-head is 2-2, but Federer played team in Stuttgart in 2016, just before basically his season finished in Wimbledon. So, and then last time they played in the Tour Finals, Federer won in straight sets pretty convincingly. So, yeah, it's hard to see past Federer in this match, but still good. The team is, bounced back from the disappointment at the Australian Open where he was injured and didn't play very well.
I don't rate team. I think he's a bottler too, and I think we'll talk about it in courting controversies. But I think he is someone for whom injuries are often as much psychological as they are real. Anyway, we'll this is controversial.
This is big news. Yeah.
The other kind of big news story that's broken in the last couple of weeks since we were with you is the ATP Player Council opting not to renew the contract of the CEO, Chris Kermode. And this has kind of been one of those stories that has shown the political divisions in the ATP Tour in a way that like we don't usually get to see, I guess. And essentially it's Djokovic versus much of like the establishment in terms of kind of what's going on here. I don't know whether do you have any thoughts on this?
No, but I'd be interested to hear yours.
My thoughts on this are that, like, because, Federer has spoken out and said that he was, very surprised and disappointed, that Kermode was booted out. And basically he's very popular and seen as a kind of modernizer within the game. And, the prize, over his tenure, the prize money has gone up massively. The sport is actually in very rude health and he's perceived as doing a very good job. So there are a lot of people who are a bit like absolutely incredulous about what's going on. And also who blame it on essentially a personal feud between him and Djokovic, dating back to this tournament that Djokovic wanted to organise in Serbia in 2013. Essentially, I think the division comes down to Djokovic wants more of the prize money to filter down to players who are being priced out of the game by the fact that, yes, you make loads of money if you're Novak Djokovic or Roger Federer, but it's very hard to break even if you're outside the top couple of hundred places, which seems a perfectly reasonable thing for Djokovic to say. And the perception is that Kermode, who is a former player himself, but someone who couldn't really make it and quit the game to start teaching and then go into administration, is sort of been a bit hard nosed about it, being like, well, if you can't cut it, you can't cut it. It's better that we provide ever increasing prize money for those people who are there. So I'm basically. And I'm happy to be, corrected if people want to write into the show and say, explain to me why Djokovic is wrong. But I'm sort of sympathetic to Djokovic as someone who is, an at-large member of the Player Council, wanting to make things better for those players who are really, really struggle. Because I do think that it's fine to say if you can't hack it, you can't hack it, and we don't need lots of very average tennis players knocking around as the paying public or whatever. But equally, it's hard especially if you come from a federation that doesn't provide, or you come from a country that doesn't provide a huge amount of funding. It's fine if you're a crap player in the UK or in America, you'll get enough funding for your coaching and travel, whatever.
And you get a wild card into Wimbledon if you're a crap UK player, which is already 50 grand right there.
Exactly. So they're supported. If you're a crap player in Serbia, I imagine you don't get a long grace period in terms of the financial stability. So I can see why a Serbian player maybe feels more strongly about something like this than like a Swiss player or Judy Murray, who's criticised it. But equally, I don't know really what the politics of this are, and certainly it seems like there's no plan B in terms of replacing him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there should be. Clearly, tennis is watched for those big names, so it is reasonable to have this kind of exponential rise in prize money, but on the other hand, both Federer and Djokovic have over 100 million in career earnings alone. Probably more than double that with all the sponsorships. So there's definitely some money that could filter down and make players' lives on the Challenger Tour a bit less stressful, and will be rewarded in the long term if more talent stays in the game. So I think I'm as surprised I have to hear myself saying this. I'm with Djokovic here.
Now, have you got any answer to my St. Patrick's Day?
No, I have
question?
Absolutely no idea.
Okay, now I'm going to Google best Irish tennis
Ask Jeeves.
So, according to ranker.com, and if you don't believe them, who do you believe? The answer is James McGee He has his own Wikipedia page, which is a start with Irish tennis players. His highest ranking was 146. So he seems like, and he got to the first round of the US Open in 2014. Other than that, he's never made it through qualifying. It's funny, though, that he doesn't get any Wimbledon wildcards. I guess that's a bit of a hangover. Anyway, so that's our answer to that question. If you have a preferred Irish person, or if a tennis player, or if I've forgotten someone really obvious.
I mean, we can all agree that St. Patrick's Day is more of a holiday for Americans that have like one Irish great-great-grandfather. So maybe the question should be, you know, does Marty Fish have, you know, or Andy Roddick maybe have some Irish...
Marty O'Fish. Anyway, on to our next section.
So it's time for backhanded compliments, and this week we'll be discussing Elina Svitolina, or Svitolina as people like to call her.
What's the correct pronunciation? You're not Ukrainian.
I'm not Ukrainian, but generally people mangle the stress on they always stress the wrong syllable when they pronounce players' names. Like
Sharapova,
Khachanov.
So, people say Khachanov, I guess.
Yeah.
But is that not stressing the right syllable?
No, because then it will be Khachanov, but I'm saying Khachanov.
Khachanov.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the stress on the second syllable. I mean, it's fair to assume that the stress is always on the wrong syllable because people say Kuznetsova when it's Kuznetsova and so on. So
okay, so Svitolina.
I would assume so. If she wants to write in and correct me, then
she's welcome to.
But you know, or Gael, maybe he wants to write in. Maybe he knows all about. Although I assume you wouldn't say the last name of your girlfriend that often.
I wonder what language they speak to one another. In
Imagine English. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Why would you like Gael Monfils to learn Ukrainian?
Or I mean, it makes more sense for her to learn French, perhaps. But this is not. We're not here to just discuss, you know, flirtatious rumors.
We already addressed that last week.
We were, yeah.
It's not really rumors, though.
It's not. It's very much confirmed.
Yeah,
as I see from the incessant Instagram posts.
And they both did very well this week at Indian Wells.
So I think they're both really improved since hooking up publicly. I think they're pushing each other forward.
Didn't she win the tour finals last year? Or was that?
Yeah, I would imagine that was like sort of.
Or was already going on?
I don't know. I'm speculating here now, but I also.
Monfils won in Rotterdam. We were happy about that last week.
Monfils has been in brilliant form.
Yeah.
Again, it's a shame to talk about Monfils when we shouldn't be talking. When we should be
anyway,
about
sorry. So okay.
He also was very good in Indian Wells.
Yeah.
And withdrew with injury.
So whatever the reasons for the kind of improved form are, Svitolina is one of those players that's kind of, I think everyone expects to go far in tournaments, but hasn't really impressed at the Grand Slams. She's kind of like the female Zverev, I think, in some ways, because she's won, you know, a couple of clay court masters and then didn't really do much at Roland Garros and so on. And also just won the tour finals, tail-ended last year. So I think she's less of a choker than Zverev. I think she's a good mover. I really enjoyed seeing her in, was it Singapore, or where did the women's tour finals take place?
Singapore sounds right.
Yeah, I think they're moving it to China, but I think it was in Singapore. And yeah, she moves really well around the court. You know, she's not afraid to come to the net at, you know, kind of judicious moments. She's a good returner. I wouldn't say she's like a massive server, but, you know, not that many women on the tour really are massive servers. Maybe like the Pliskova and, Osaka, I guess, and Williams, I guess, are the only ones that really immediately come to mind. So do you think Svitolina can make it through the slams this year? Do you think
she's clearly one of the most consistent players in the WTA, and I think that her getting to the quarterfinals of the Australian at the start of the year, she's, you know, been there or thereabouts in pretty much every tournament. It's converting that there or thereaboutsness into, you know, something more than that, and whether she has that sort of, you know, explosiveness. You know, Osaka has this explosiveness where you can see, like, she's always going to have a, you know, puncher's chance in a match against anyone because she has these weapons. You know, does Svitolina have the weapons to, if she got to a Grand Slam final, for her to be favourite? I mean, I just remember like Wozniacki's first break when she first got to the US Open final, I think against Serena.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And you sort of just thought there's no chance because Serena is going to have a chance against anyone because, you know, she can turn it up and turn it on. But what can Wozniacki do there? And when Wozniacki did win a Grand Slam at the Australian Open last year, she played Halep, and it was a sort of battle between two people who were there or thereabouts in other slams and sort of hadn't converted. So that's sort of why it was like you sort of gave her a chance. And I sort of think that, you know, if it was Svitolina versus, I mean, Wozniacki's wildly off the boil at the moment, I guess. But if you said her against...
Why are you looking at me like that?
You gave her a chance against Kerber.
Well, yeah. I mean, Kerber does have weapons, I would say.
Yeah,
but she's also kind of like...
I mean, all these people have weapons, but I just think that if the draw falls well for her...
The thing is, she beat a lot of top players in Singapore, and unlike on the men's side, there's no real difference between, these kind of big 3-set tournaments versus the majors. I mean, the slight format differences and no on-court coaching, basically. But, there's no reason why she can't bring that form to, Wimbledon or... I guess the French is probably more likely because she seems to be quite comfortable in clay.
Comfortable with the French.
There you go. It will be like a home tournament for her.
Exactly.
But I think if you're like a counter-puncher, then there's always the sense that someone who comes up playing against you aggressively in the final and is already clearly playing that well that week because they're in the final, they are kind of dictating how the match is going to go. Like, it's theirs to win or lose. Maybe that's slightly unfair because, Djokovic is obviously... if someone's playing Djokovic in the final, they're never going to be like,
on the women's tour, when was the last time the obvious sort of counterpuncher in a matchup won in a Grand Slam final?
Well, Kerber beat Williams in Wimbledon last year. That's an example. Yeah, I mean, the last... Obviously, Osaka has won a couple, and she's not a counterpuncher. But yeah, I guess, it depends on the draw, it was what we're saying. But we think she can do it. Is that fair?
I don't see why not. You expect her to do it. She's 24. She's got plenty of time left to do it.
Her youth ahead of her.
I mean, it's like however much I think Zverev is a bottler, he just has plenty of time to win a Grand Slam, and naturally, Serena is going to move out of the way eventually, and Osaka is someone who doesn't seem to have the consistency to win everything. Although I know she's currently on a Grand Slam streak, we'll see it at Roland Garros. But I think there's going to be tournaments where it's just a crapshoot between 10 players, 20 players. I don't see the women's game homogenizing around a single player for the foreseeable future. So yeah, absolutely, I think she's going to have a shot. I think she'll be a Grand Slam semi-finalist by the end of next year, if not this year. Grand Slam finalist, did I say, or semi-finalist?
You said semi-finalist, but I think that's a very conservative prediction.
I think she'll be a Grand Slam finalist by the end of next year, if not this year. So because I just think she has the consistency to put herself in the right place, and you never know the way the draw is going to open up for you.
I'm happy with that conclusion. No arguments this time, so we should move on to court and controversies.
So the final section is court and controversies. What are we doing this week, Pavel?
We were originally going to do something else, but we thought it would be quite topical to talk about in light of Nadal withdrawing against Federer and giving him a free ticket to the final, about whether something can or should be done about these situations where players clearly injured, as Nadal was against Khachanov, and just kind of fair credit to him, he managed to win, he gets the points, he gets the money, but then the viewers are kind of left, are kind of robbed of a good matchup in the semi-final, and if someone withdraws before the tournament, then there's a lucky loser system in place. So I think the question is, should or could something like that be implemented later on? I think the
obvious answer to that is no. But I think there are other questions with withdrawals. I mean, I don't think that works.
Why not?
Because then it's like a case of Khachanov loses to Nadal, Nadal withdraws, so Khachanov plays Federer, and then he beats Federer, wins the tournament, having lost to Nadal in the quarterfinals. I mean, it would be...
Well, you can do that as a lucky loser. You've lost in qualifying, but you can still go on and win the tournament, or get.
Well, it's much less likely that that's going to happen for obvious reasons, and B, qualifying is a separate thing. That's a sort of tournament with multiple winners in order to try and get into the main draw of a tour. So it's obviously
in the tour finals, you can lose in the group stages. And still win
again, that is
and you can be even in the
group stage format. I also do think that devalues slightly, it's the fact that Zverev won the tour finals last year, having beating Djokovic in the final, having been pretty much thumped by him in the group stage.
It's funny because Djokovic had the opposite experience when he was beaten by Federer in 2015 and then smacked him in the final. So what goes around comes around.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it does. I do think it slightly devalues that. I don't love that as a format, but so I don't think that really works. But I do also think that it's a shame because he beat Khachanov, and then the media started pumping their first meeting between Federer and Nadal storyline since 2017. So there's a lot of anticipation for it, even though I think it was quite obvious from the match between Nadal and Khachanov, and also from Nadal's press conference afterwards, that he was not really in a fit state to compete.
Yeah,
it's difficult because if Nadal is winning that match and looks like he's in a position to convert it, he retires. That goes down as a loss on his record, against Khachanov. And I think that's probably something that could be done in terms of retiring when you're in a winning position. It's difficult, or retiring just generally not being marked as a loss in terms of like your head-to-head record with someone, or it's just like, because the trouble is Nadal gritted his teeth and came through that second set tiebreak, I think it was.
Yeah,
and
saved a set point actually in his service game.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if Khachanov had won that tiebreak, Nadal would have probably have withdrawn from the match, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Nadal has, even though I don't like his game that much, he's a fighter, and he's been fighting against his body for many years, and I think he likes, maybe like likes makes it sound kind of masochistic, but I think, when he grits his teeth and gets through these matches where he's not feeling 100%, he's definitely done that before, and I think that just speaks to his kind of mental strength and stubbornness, like in a good way, that he just doesn't want to just say I've had enough. Although looking at his hardcore record over the last couple of 18 months, it's absolutely startling how many times he's withdrawn or retired hurt.
Yeah.
Apart from that one run in Toronto when he managed to win, I think it's something like 18 consecutive, I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's a really weird statistic.
So I think there's part of the issue is that, like, in order to be like a really top tennis player, you've got to be like obsessed with winning. And I don't think Nadal would ever countenance not trying to win in that position when he knows that he has the opportunity to do it. I also think that Nadal has now reached the point where he is also very reluctant to lose, and it would rather withdraw from a match earlier on than like face himself losing because of the limitation of his body. And as you say, like, he does have a pretty terrible record in terms of, if I was a tournament organizer, I would be pretty anxious about Nadal coming into any tournament just because of his withdrawals record, especially on hard court. It was a problem at Wimbledon last summer. I mean, occasionally you get these tournaments where, especially when it's particularly hot at the Australian, US. Yeah, actually, they're all hot at the right time. Where you get
the French doesn't get that hot, right? Like Paris in May is probably
your best bet.
Yeah,
but sometimes there it is hot.
But it's where you do the most running around because of clay.
So there are certain tournaments where you get like a seemingly disproportionate number of withdrawals, and it's bad for viewers, it's bad for players, but there is also this question of like prize money. If you withdraw prior to a match, you don't get your prize money. So a lot of players will sort of think they're injured, but will need to turn up, especially at Grand Slams where the prize money is so huge just for playing in the first round.
But I think they changed that rule, right? I remember in 2017, there was like this record number of withdrawals at Wimbledon in the first round. Not withdrawals, retirements. And I remember one of them was Federer was playing against Dolgopolov, and Dolgopolov kind of like limped his way through the first set and then said, I've had enough. And then people were quite upset because, someone else could have taken their place. And then I think there was a new rule put in place, is if you withdraw before, you still get part of the prize money to kind of like encourage you to just give up your spot and just say, I'm not going to be able to compete. I don't know if it's an ATP rule or just a Wimbledon rule, though.
No, I don't either.
But that's a good idea, I guess.
It's a good idea. It's a sort of slight defeatist idea as well, because it's to allow people to withdraw and also get their prize money.
Well, if you're qualified to be there, I mean, being one of the top 100 players in the world. Again, we talked a bit earlier about how much money people kind of ranked below the elite should get, but I don't have a problem with Dolgopolov getting a bit of money because over the years he's kind of earned the right to be in the top 100. He's a very entertaining player to watch. I don't know why we're focusing on him. I just can't think of any.
We just love it. We're obsessed. I think
good highlight reel.
I just think that money is part of the problem as well, in terms of like the more money you get in the game, the more people's like career earnings are, the more all these tournaments are, the more precious people are about their like physical existence.
But presumably Nadal didn't fight through against Khachanov because he wanted the extra prize money. I mean,
no,
he wears a $700,000 watch on his wrist.
Sure, but what I mean is that like people are more likely to withdraw for like niggling complaints now than they were, I'm sure, 20 years ago. I don't know. I actually don't have any data. Again, please write in if you are a data scientist listening.
Or if you're James McGee.
Or if you're James McGee himself. We should try and get James McGee on the podcast.
We should do that with just all the like great tennis players from minor countries. Like, can we get the best Taiwanese?
Taiwanese would be quite good, I think.
Yeah, there was that Yen Su Lu, right?
Well, yeah, one of the 50 to 100 players on the ATP player counts as Taiwanese, I think. Anyway, I think that you see a lot of players withdrawing now because they are worried about exacerbating injuries that could then see them miss, other opportunities, or you take your foot off the pedal on the tour, you lose sponsorship deals if you slip outside a certain ranking, that sort of thing. There's so much pressure on people to like be constantly playing and competing in these top tier tournaments.
I just want to come back to the controversial thing you said at the start of the podcast, where you said that you think Team And I'm sure there's other players. Kyrgios is probably an obvious example of someone who kind of his body lets them down because their mind lets them down first.
Well, I'm thinking back to last year's Wimbledon, I think, where Team withdrew in like the third
Against Baghdatis.
Was it against Baghdatis?
I'm pretty sure.
And I was just watching it at the time and just being like, things weren't going his way, and he was getting more and more frustrated, and the situation was getting to the point where it was quite apparent that he was going to lose, and then suddenly he sort of went up to the umpire and said, I can't go on anymore. And look, I'm not going to, I don't know if I'm even legally allowed to suggest it, but like sometimes I think that when people are losing and things are not going well for them, the withdrawal system, the kind of vagueness about like injuries, you can always be like, I've got...
Yeah, you can't do that in football, can you? You can't be like, I'm 4-0 down. Can we just all go home now?
Yeah, exactly. Just be like, we didn't really lose. We withdrew from the match at 4-0 in the 91st minute. We could have changed it all in those last 2 minutes of stoppage time. I mean, I was a little bit skeptical about that, and I think because I perceive Thiem to be someone who is, not a particularly hard player. It doesn't have the kind of mental hardness that like someone like Nadal and Djokovic kind of like dig in and do it. But maybe it's also unfair. I don't know. I don't like withdrawals. I don't like walkovers. I think it's boring for the fans, boring for the players. I sort of think they should just battle out until they're dead. Leave it all on the court.
Do you think it's better what Federer did in the last couple of seasons? Just sat out the clay court and he was like...
I mean, it's obviously a shame if you're like a French tennis fan or or want to see Federer all these places. I mean, I would like them all to play. I think they should be performing monkeys for us, and they should play every single tournament that we want them to play, and also serve me dinner in my house. But
well, on that note,
realistically, but no, I don't. I don't care about protecting their bodies.
On that bombshell, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next week from Miami.
Miami, welcome to Miami. Bienvenidos a Miami.
This is going to be cut.
You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We should be available. If it's missing from anywhere, drop us a line, let us know. Follow us on Twitter @andvolley, no serve, and we'll be back next week.
See you then.